And we are recording with Dr. Eben Alexander as well as Dr. Jessica Rose. And I believe it was with Dr. McKernan or Kevin McKernan. And we were talking back and forth. And somehow or another, I'd gotten on to your book, Dr. Alexander, Proof of Heaven, which is in the description for everybody listening.
Uh-huh.
I was going on and on and on about it, and Dr. Rose seemed pretty fascinated by it. So one thing led to another, kind of putting everything together, and finally have you two together here. But I don't quite remember how it is that got us started on it. Dr. Rose, do you recall what it was? I do so many shows that you have to forgive me.
Yeah.
They do kind of blur together sometimes. I don't. What was the exact, I guess, jumping off point that got you into it?
So it was with Kevin that you brought up the book, but you and I have done this a few times, and we seem to always breach the subject matter of consciousness. So um, I remember you were describing Dr. Alexander's description of. I actually asked you specifically, like when he
Oh
described
yeah.
this experience, did he describe it as levels? And because I haven't had this experience, but somehow, somehow I can see something. So I'd love to talk about that. So, yeah, you insisted that I read the book, and then you were like, I can, we can have a show, and I'm like, yeah. And so that's how it evolved, I think.
Think it was, yeah, the three, like the earthworm's eye view, and then going into like the sort of like the
Or
magical countryside, and then finally, like, yeah, the core, the center of it all. Dr. Alexander, I know that since you've written Living in a Mindful Universe, it does kind of answer the question more, and it talks about other people's experiences and kind of how similar so many of them are, primarily in my favorite aspect, which is um the analogy I always use is when you go to the gym, as much as it sucks, you don't question why you're there. You went there, you're like, today I'm doing triceps and it's going to be painful, but you know why you went. You went to push yourself and to challenge yourself and to ultimately become stronger. So the question that I think you arise, or at least postulate, is that the suffering we go through in this life, it's not all chaotic, Buddha, life is suffering. It is, but you chose this course. I chose this life. You chose this life. Could you maybe go into that a little more since it has been a while since we last talked, Dr. Alexander?
Well, I think certainly in looking back on my experience, especially after my near-death experience, it was caused by, a weakened coma due to a severe gram-negative bacterial meningoencephalitis back in November 2008. But one thing I recognized pretty early on was that um, certain features of my life that I might have previously seen as hardships, difficulties, hurdles, challenges, etc., in fact, were beautiful gifts that had greatly enhanced my kind of growth and transformation as a soul. So I came to recognize that many times the things that we might see as kind of bad when they're happening, we later appreciate how in many ways they make us stronger. And for me, the specific challenges I would mention, in particular in my life, one was the fact that I was put up for adoption when I was 11 days old. My birth mother was 16 years old, unwed. And, you know, in looking back on it, that caused a lot of trouble for me in terms of challenges and a lack of understanding for a while. But ultimately, the great gift that came through my NDE was one of accepting this beautiful kind of alignment and deserving of the love of the universe that I had not recognized before. Now,
Mm.
another example I'll put out there, just because many people kind of face this kind of challenge, is the fact that I had to stop drinking back in 1991. Very early in my career, I recognized it was not contributing to my work as a neurosurgeon, and got away from alcohol. And, it wasn't necessarily easy, but a lot of help from family, a lot of love. And I came to see that being born alcoholic in the first place was the real gift, and
Mm.
that it was going through the process of addressing that hardship and challenge and then being able to rise above it and leave it behind. That was the gift in my life. And I wouldn't trade that whole process I wouldn't go back and change it all to where I was never adopted and was never born an alcoholic, because then I
Mm,
would not have gained the tremendous gains that I gained from those challenges and hardships. They appeared challenging in parts of my life when I couldn't fully see the value of them. But over time, I've come to realize that, for example, anyone who I might have seen in my life as a nemesis or an enemy, I came to realize after my coma, in many cases, they were near and dear soul mates, but we were trying to teach each other such profoundly tough lessons that I was perceiving it as a challenge to me. And
mm,
likewise, they might have felt the same way. But that ultimately we were helping each other to grow and to transform as souls. And that's why I tell people to try and take a different attitude and see the challenges, hardships, the people that are tough in your life, the issues that are challenges in your life, to try and step back a bit and see that when you rise above your ego self, because the ego has great difficulty with all this, and the ego gets us trapped into addictions and all kinds of stuff. But if you can start to develop a sense of higher soul, which I do through meditation, through
mm,
using sacred acoustic binaural beats to, on a daily basis, get in touch with that spiritual realm, that over time, I think you start to find that cultivating a relationship with higher soul and with this kind of primordial mind, with kind of the highest good for all involved, is one that can be very helpful in seeing our lives from a fresh perspective, and one that enables us to grow and transform through these kind of otherwise apparently negative energies.
mm.
Mhm.
And that finding that core anchor experience daily that sort of roots you in the at least to not forget the beauty of the whole experience. Like Dr. Rose and I have kind of joked that all of our shows ultimately kind of end with just like, yeah,
Cats.
if all else fails, yeah, go find a cat and pet it. Like there's beauty in that, right? Or as Dr.
No, I
Alex,
say
We
it
have two
every day,
dogs.
Tommy.
We have two dogs, and they serve a wonderful
same thing, yeah.
role in our life.
You
They're
find
just
that core experience that sort of anchors you back down, and I have to do it through meditation. And the more days in a row I'll go without a meditation, which is very rare for me. I find that like you talked about that nemesis feeling. It's almost like if you meditate more, I would imagine you see the nemesis more like a sparring partner. Like you're both there, you're trading blows, but you're training. When I
as
don't
an ally.
meditate,
You're exactly
yes,
right.
when I don't meditate, I find I start to see it as just someone or something's out to get me. It's personal. It's the pain is being inflicted on me.
That's
Um,
ego.
yeah. Dr. Rose, could you talk about it? Because I think in the sign off in your emails is always what's the line you always use in your emails? Sometimes when the day is beautiful, or sometimes when the sun is shining. What's the one your sign off in your emails?
Harry Mullis quote, like sometimes when you paddle out and it's a good surf, the world doesn't seem like a bad place. But yeah, I have so many questions though.
Go for it. Yeah, I'll shut up. Go for it.
No, no, I don't want you to shut up. I'm just
Yeah.
I'm forgetful, as you know. I had to write them down. Just a comment. I'm 49 now, so I find like my who I am, whoever that is um evolving more quickly the older I get. It's like, I'm up here somewhere. At least that's how I feel. And I'm at a point in my life when I feel like all living things, all things, living things, I guess, have their own category, I mean, we share everything with everything. That's kind of how I feel. We're all kind of connected as unique beings, yes, but ultimately I think that we're all the same. We all come from the same place. So I was even wondering when you were talking about um opponents, like helping you to learn lessons and actually being positive forces. I was wondering in the drawing that your son made of the battle that was going on, I got a visual of the bacteria, because like that part of your story really fascinates me as a biologist. You're like you're a medical miracle, and they still don't know how the hell you got that strain of bacteria how you basically went away for 7 days and how you came back, basically the same. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. So maybe those bacteria, I mean, this is where my thinking goes sometimes,
Yeah.
were actually allies as well. Like maybe they were kindred spirits. They certainly have, you know, I think their own vibration, and yeah, they took you out, but they didn't take you out. They took you
Right.
somewhere else. So it's
They
like,
taught me a lesson. They gave me a
yeah,
gift, essentially. Yeah, I
Mm.
mean that's a beautiful way of looking at it. I mean, I look at the whole universe as existing within consciousness, within this God mind. So yes, the bacteria are there too, as are, all the different features of our lives, and we might see them as not necessarily our ally, when we're looking from an egotistical kind of materialist perspective, but in a grander sense, it's all really working together. And the more we can open ourselves to being aligned with the kind of lessons we can get from all of our life experiences, the more they can end up having a positive spin. Now, for
yeah,
me, the big challenge that you're talking about and explaining my survival was also addressed in a medical case report written on my medical records by 3 doctors who were not involved in my care, but they were absolutely fascinated by my recovery. And that case report is by Dr. Serbicana, Lauren Moore, and Bruce Grayson. It came out in the Journal of Nervous and Mental Disease, September 2018. And the two major points they made, one is that my brain was in no shape to harbor any kind of dream or hallucination.
yeah.
That's a very
Your
important point. And it's the
neocortex was like,
reason it's because my neocortex was taken down. When that's the thing about meningitis is it's in many ways a perfect model for human death because of the
Mm.
way it attacks the neocortex, the human
yeah,
parts of the brain, and tries to destroy it. And that's what was going on in my case. And yet and so by doing that, it takes away the parts of the brain that would contribute to a dream or hallucination. So it makes it far more challenging to explain how a phenomenal experience, especially one that's kind of robust and detailed and more alive and transformational than any experience you've ever had, how does that happen when those human parts of the brain have been inactivated? And part of the answer to that question has to do with a whole series of papers in the last 12 years on psychedelic substances like
mhm,
psilocybin, LSD, DMT, showing that those substances basically turn the brain off. So if you thought that by taking those substances, your brain must be lighting up like a Christmas tree, you're wrong. Your brain is
right,
going dark. It's getting out of the way. And that's a very important point because I saw what it was like when meningitis was the mechanism of taking my brain out of the way. And it was extraordinary indeed. Now, of course, the other major point in that medical case report is how do you explain this recovery? The peer
yeah,
review editors of the journal challenged them and said, how do you explain this miraculous recovery? You go through the medical literature on meningitis and you don't find this kind of thing happening with severe week-long cases of gram-negative bacterial meningitis. And the authors said it's because he had a near-death experience. That's what allowed for healing that goes far beyond the normal expected healing. And the big message to all of us about that is that, power prayer, mind over matter, these spiritual forces can have a tremendous role in bringing us into wholeness and healing. So to pay attention to things like prayer and meditation when used in a healing fashion, because they can have a very strong benefit.
I need to ask you, like, it, it occurred to me when I read your book that, especially at the end, when you said the girl in the butterfly wing was your sister, right? And I'm wondering, because obviously I don't care who you are, you have childhood trauma from something, and yours was specific. My mom was also adopted, and
Mhm.
she I don't know anything about it because she doesn't like to talk about it, but
Right.
I wonder, I know you can't answer this question, but like, if you if that wasn't part of your childhood experience, do you think that you would have had the week-long experience in the other realm that you did? And if you do, like, how do you think it would be different? Like, do you think that was about addressing that specific trauma to help you come to terms with it and know that it's okay and come back to this world to kind of readjust that? Like, so I guess what my question is, if anyone, because I don't know much about near-death experience personally, and even I haven't read about it, but like exactly what you just said about ayahuasca is true. I've heard, because I've never experienced that either, that this is a way to heal trauma. So I hear a lot of similarities about cutting off the brain and enabling you to disconnect from this to go there. And it always seems to revolve around healing, like from a place of true love that we don't really sometimes know here. I know that was a lot of words, but I think you know what I'm trying to ask. Like, yeah.
Well, I would say that every near-death experience is tailored for the individual who's having it,
Right.
period. There's really no other purpose for it. And so they only make sense when you look at them in the context of the person who's living that life.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard for me to conjecture other kind of circumstances from my own NDE. All I know is what my life presented and what then came to me in the NDE. But I think they're always about healing. It's always about coming more into wholeness. That is coming in to be the soul that we came here to be.
Yeah.
And that is something that's not always so apparent to the ego mind. I always like making the distinction with our workshop audiences and that kind of thing, that do not for 1 second identify with that voice in your head, your ego mind, as who you are. That is not your consciousness. I wish Rene Descartes, instead of saying, I think therefore I am, he had said, I am aware of my thoughts and therefore I am. But those thoughts are not who you are. The magic of who you are is the awareness of those thoughts. And that's the part of you that expands tremendously when the brain and body die. That's what goes through a near-death experience. So it's not so much the ego part, although the ego part can be very active in trying to tell and shape the story when you come back to this world. But ultimately, the deeper lessons and the recognition and the kind of perspective is that of the higher soul, of the kind of connected part of us that connects with that primordial mind. It's all united. I mean, that's where the science on this gets so excited, and where I would encourage you to read not just Proof of Heaven, but what I would say is the true proof of heaven, which is our third book, Living in a Mindful Universe, co-written with my partner, Karen Newell. But that's where we really go the distance to unite, the hard problem of consciousness from neuroscience, the binding problem, the apparent unity of consciousness from philosophy of mind within the individual, all the evidence for non-local consciousness out of parapsychology, like telepathy, remote viewing, and then, of course, quantum physics, which is kind of the 900-pound gorilla in the room that's forcing us to admit that consciousness is fundamental in the universe. And even though materialist scientists have struggled with that for 100 years or more, we're more and more getting to a point now where quantum physics is very clearly pointing out the primacy of mind in the universe, a position, known at least as idealism, if not, I think a better term philosophically is evolutionary panentheism, which talks about kind of the unitedness of mind. Panentheism means that God mind is throughout all of us. We're all within that mind. And that's part of understanding how all this works, and how when your brain and body die, it's not a closing down of your awareness, which is what materialist scientists would predict, which is what I thought would happen when I died. But it's just the opposite. It's an expansion of awareness. And this expansion involves a recognition that we're all in this together. The life review from near-death experiences. If you pay attention to experts like Bruce Grayson, who's written about thousands and thousands of cases of near-death experiences, and in an article he wrote on life reviews that came out, or information on life reviews, came out in the fall of 2021 Journal of Near-Death Studies, you'll recognize life reviews are not just a remembering of events, but a reliving of the main events of one's life. And not only that, they're relived from the perspective of everyone involved. That's another major point that Bruce Grayson, who studied these things for 45 years, makes a big point of. Uh, so it's like the golden rule is written into the fabric of the universe, because when you go through a life review, if you handed out a lot of pain and suffering to other people, you're going to be on the receiving end of that. And that might not be so much fun. In fact, I think that's where our main ideas of hell have come from.
Mm.
People who were very mistreating of others, who then went through a life review and they had to be on the receiving end of what they'd been dishing out.
Yeah.
It's really just a lesson to teach us. We're all in this together. This one mind hypothesis is pretty clear on that. And when we hurt another, we're hurting ourselves. So these
Mm.
are beautiful lessons. Religions have tried to teach us for thousands of years. And now the science of consciousness will bring those lessons home.
Mm.
What do you think about all this AI stuff? I'd really like to know your opinion as a neuroscientist, and also from your experience. Like I'm pretty like, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about it yet, but it seems to me that the element of consciousness will never be achieved. So it seems like, I don't know, there might be some people who try to move from artificial to real, or I don't, a natural intelligence. I don't know how you would
Right.
call it, but
Well,
like, what are your
in this
thoughts?
discussion, first of all, I would remind everyone that the map is not the territory. Okay, people often get very confused, and they think if they're really familiar with the map, they know the territory, but they're not the same thing. So
Mhm.
very important to kind of separate those out. And the other thing I'll point out is, don't believe for 1 second that no matter how advanced one of these quote AI systems is, that it is self-aware. People kind of assume that self-awareness is built into this discussion of consciousness and AI. As far as I'm concerned, you will never have a digital computer that is self-aware. I think we might be approaching self-awareness with quantum computers, only because you greatly kind of maximize the number of potential states that the system is mimicking. So potentially self-awareness might come along with quantum computing, but I'm still very hesitant to even suggest that till we make a lot more progress with it. But from my perspective as a medical physician, I still look at these AI systems as mainly just what we used to call expert systems. Back in the 80s and 90s, those were computer systems that helped us in medicine, like to diagnose things, just
Mhm.
because they had CPUs that could run a lot of
Fast.
cycles, and they had huge memories. And if you have a lot of cycle, a lot of memory, you could take a system like IBM's Deep Blue and make it a chess champion. It can beat any human on earth, because by being able to model billions and billions of future moves, it selects the best moves. And it's
Mhm.
brute force. It has nothing to do with self-awareness or with some deep understanding of the game. It's simply a brute force approach. And that's what most AI still is a brute force approach to kind of trying to come to correct answers. And we'll see. I think it's important to stay somewhat cautious about AI, not because of the real dangers of AI as much as the dangers of human beings and how they will misapply certain technologies. So I think in that sense, AI could have some dangers that we need to kind of guard against. We don't need to be overrun with fake news and fake videos and
Yeah.
you know with hallucinations of AI systems that have kind of
Mm.
missed the point in what they're supposed to examine, analyze, integrate, assimilate, and determine. So I think treating AI with kind of a bit of an arm's length protection, but I think potentially AI can be very, very useful if it's properly managed and allowed to expand tremendously. And as I said, when we truly move into a world where quantum computers are becoming much more robust and kind of usable, potentially there we might encounter evidence of self-awareness. But essentially, the way I see the world now is it's truly a world of this evolutionary panentheism idea, where everything is occurring within the realm of consciousness. The whole physical universe emerges from the realm of consciousness. So in that sense, I'm very excited about seeing where further kind of studies of the brain, of computers, of AI, quantum principles, et cetera, will take us in our understanding.
Mm. And for your kind of remarks coming out of the coma of all is well, um, I have when I sometimes when I suffer from depression, I actually or particular bouts of that depression, it's February and April is the 10-year anniversary of my brother's suicide. And I find kind of when I fall into, darker, not self-harming or anything, but just darker, like the days seem longer. It just seems, the bad anniversary is coming up and you go to the gym and you meditate and you clean your apartment and you go out and get some sunshine, you call a loved one. You go through all the motions, but it's still a little more empty. I do find myself and I can't help but feel guilty, but nonetheless, I do find myself thinking of your quote, all is well, and that I tell myself like in the end all is well. But I'm not saying it to myself in a positive, loving way. It's sort of like a don't worry, no matter how crappy or crummy it gets now, it's all going to be okay in the end. So just hang on. Could you maybe touch on that? Like, 'cause I'm not sure how to digest or unpack that. I don't, it's like you're taking a test and you're failing it, and you're like, you know what? I know I'm failing this test. I know my parents are going to yell at me, but at least the test is going to be over soon, and I can, I'll have a little bit of time outside before I have to go home and I get grounded or something.
Well, from my perspective, that whole kind of attitude of all is well is something that's not necessarily going to come from an ego perspective, from living day to day in this body, uh, kind of participating is playing the role of this version of Eben Alexander. That all is well is something that really comes from the depths of meditation, of kind of the depths of my journey in the NDE. I mean, one thing to remember about the life review and near-death experiences is by having access to the entire life, all the events, and it can even include from past lives, et cetera, but such a full range of events related to the soul ends up showing connections that are not so apparent to us when we're living our lives in the here and now of Earth time. And I think that's kind of an important point to get that when you can see the connections more broadly across time and space, so that things make much more sense about your life, and you can see it as a lifetime that was spent in transformation and evolution and contributing really to the advancement of consciousness itself, the mind of the universe, then that kind of all is well perspective is something that starts to bubble back in. But that would,
Mhm.
for example, when I hear your kind of lead-in comments here from me, that would involve some meditation where I might be asking my lost loved one, my father, for example, my adoptive father who passed over 4 years before my coma, to give me something, some little tweak of evidence. And for example,
Mhm.
your brother, potentially his soul could offer you a little something in terms of an awareness, in terms of a memory, in terms of something to kind of enliven in you the fact that he still has an influence in your life and vice versa, that maybe you all can still have some kind of interaction. And that's what ultimately starts taking us away from any of the kind of egotistical issues around loss, around losing a loved one, and about thinking that there are things in our life that are not so all is well in the moment. But I find that often just going into meditation and just letting myself flow very deeply and ride those tones can do a world of good to kind of bringing me out of it all, feeling more of a sense of connection and more of a natural, organic sense of all is well, of admitting that beautiful reality. It definitely benefits from a dive into meditation, which is that spiritual realm is a timeless space. It's basically where all of your life can exist kind of simultaneously, just like in those life reviews. And yet we can go in there and kind of visualize and get the emotional feeling for what it's like to successfully navigate to that all is well position. And for me, I've been doing this for a long time, this business of meditating and trying to use it to this kind of benefit, to give me that all is well perspective, kind of in a natural flowing organic form, no
Mhm.
matter what the issues of the day are. And that's why for me, daily meditation has become so important at helping me to kind of navigate this life in more of what I would call a flow state,
Mm,
that where all is well and where I just kind of know that as a principle, as opposed to fighting and struggling and trying to make sense of that. I
mm.
hope that
Mm.
helped.
No, it does. It and when I'm in those meditative states, I still have it's almost like not wanting to get out of the shower. Like the hot water feels so good. Sometimes when I'm in those states, I'm like, I don't want to, despite, how wonderful my life is. I get to do a podcast for a living. My parents are happily married still. My two remaining brothers are happy and healthy, and I have great friends, and I'm healthy. And I mean, for all the bad in the world, like my life's pretty awesome. I'm wearing slippers and I have a blanket right now. Like this is my 9 to 5.
You're making a beautiful point here, Tommy, and that is gratitude.
Yes.
Never, ever, ever forget gratitude. And I must say, ever since my coma, back in November of 2008, it's really very difficult for me to kind of harbor any moments of
Mm,
self-pity because, by all rights, I should have been underground back in late November of 2008, but I'm not. I
mm,
wasn't put there. I came back to this world, and I believe I have a lot to still share and offer. But for me, it's all about giving to the world. And
mm,
there's none of this kind of wallowing in anything wrong in my life. I mean, as soon as I start feeling badly about some particular circumstance or event in my life, there's that higher soul part of me that's going, who are you trying to kid? You're the
mm,
most blessed, fortunate soul on this in this universe. So
mm,
embrace it. But gratitude is so important because we all have so many blessings, and if they were taken away, that would be a big challenge. So be grateful for the blessings we have, and that includes people. I mean, even in homeless situations and what have you, you can always find things to be grateful for. And I
mm,
think once people start doing that, they start realizing that gratitude will start piling up and contributing to other benefits in their life. So just never lose sight of the pluses, of the loves, of the other people we have, and remember, it's always about relationships. It's
Yeah.
never about accumulation of any kind of material good or wealth or any of that, other than you can use those kinds of material assets to enrich the lives of others, to help give and give back and make the world a far better place. But ultimately, it's all about what we can do for each other and to help each other. And that was
mm,
something that became crystal clear to me after my coma journey, and it's really been a tremendous gift ever since.
mm. Dr. Rose, I'm sorry. I know I've been kind of boxing you out of the conversation.
Oh no, I'm listening away. I'm like halfway between like absolutely on the gratitude. Like I it's been really rainy where I am, so I'm like when the sun came out yesterday, for example, I was just like literally saying out loud, thank you. Like because I love the sun and it feels so good. And it's like, I, there's, a lot of people would feel weird, like looking up to the sky and saying thank you, I suppose, but I just don't. It's like,
Mm,
I really mean that, like, thank you, because
mm,
it's
I
not
do
just
that
for
quite a
me.
bit
It's like,
myself.
yeah, it's like all the people and the words that I write, everything is going to like be a part of that now. It's like I don't know, it's so hard to put into words. It's like I think one of the greatest things anyone can ever learn is that to give is to get. Like if most
mm,
people understood what that actually meant, it's like we would be so much better off as a species because it's so true. It's like the more I give, and it feels so damn good to give, just like give. There doesn't have to be any like, what do I get? Because it's like a lot of people are like kind of like that. And it's like, no, you get so much by giving. Like here, it
mm,
like feels really damn good.
mm,
But I'm also like, this is just too fascinating to cover in an hour, but I'm so amazed. Like the biology of what happened to you is really so interesting to me. So like this E. coli, I mean, have you have you delved into where that came from, or like is this problematic for other people? Was it just something like some fluke? Like and is it just okay? Like, are you okay with accepting that it was just that you're a miraculous human being? Like
Well,
how
we certainly looked into it. I mean, my fellow physicians and I trying to find, how did this happen? I mean, for one thing, E. coli meningitis almost always happens in newborns. It's
yeah.
extremely rare beyond the age of 3 months. So
Hmm.
my doctors had that little mystery. And of course, I had the challenge of trying to explain my level of maturity to people, and given that setting where I quite obviously had an immature kind of immune system or what have you to get into all this. Um, but no, we never found out how I got that E. coli. And to me, it makes perfect sense that I got it because it enabled this incredible week-long coma that then gave me 2 months of recovery of all my mental functions. And all of it's a tremendous gift. So I just kind of accept that as all right, that makes sense, even if we never kind of officially find out a medical reason for why I got it. But it
That's
was a
so
tremendous
healthy.
gift. It was one of the best things to ever happen in my life. So I'm not gonna fight it one bit. I'd like to just also make a little comment though about altruism, because what you were talking about a few minutes ago, Jessica, is right there. It's a big challenge to materialist scientists and kind of militant atheists who want to pretend there's no purpose to any of this, and that we're all just meat robots. We're basically just chemical machines, and we experience this thing we call consciousness, but it's just chemical reactions, electron fluxes in the brain. There's no purpose to it. But then you have these beautiful examples of altruism where people jump to the rescue of fellow human beings, even complete strangers, like someone jumping onto subway tracks to move someone out of harm's way that they don't know. And yet these things happen all the time. There's no way to explain altruism in any way from kind of that militant atheist materialist perspective, without admitting that there's much more to the notion of spirit, mind, and kind of free will and the way we interact with our fellow beings. So altruism for me is one of the most beautiful examples of where materialism is simply dead wrong. Now, if you
Mm.
read our book, Living in a Mindful Universe, you'll find in fact, all the reasons why materialism are wrong are written hugely throughout the modern scientific literature. And materialism essentially has been disproven and discarded by modern science. And the best evidence of that was the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics for entanglement, because entanglement is absolutely a phenomenon within our universe of information assimilation and integration that goes far beyond our normal notions of causality within a four-dimensional space-time. And that's the realm of operation of materialism. And yet that's not really where you need to go. You need to go much deeper into this universe to explain entanglement. And entanglement is basically part of the mental layer of the universe. It's part of the kind of knowledge layer of the universe. And that's what we have access to as sentient beings. So I would say that there's tremendous evidence that materialism is false, and that means no, our brain is not just creating consciousness, birth to death and nothing more, but the consciousness is much grander than that, and something that actually expands tremendously at the time of bodily death. That's what near-death experiences have been trying to tell us for thousands of years. And finally, the science is catching up and admitting that there are ways to explain all this from a scientific viewpoint. And that's where we're headed, is towards the mind-brain relationship as established, within a philosophical model of evolutionary panentheism.
Mhm.
Have you endeavored to examine the brain heart relationship? Because this really fascinates me, because the electrical and like we don't have any idea, in my opinion, like how these things are synced and connected. So like
Uh,
do you also think the heart is like, I'll let you.
well, I would say first and foremost, this is all about heart consciousness.
Right.
And I will attribute that statement to the wisdom of my partner, Karen Newell. I mean, she spent her whole life as an idealist. and was fully versed in many of these spiritual matters when I met her. And she was one who kept reminding me that all of this beautiful love that I was talking about encountering in the core realm was nothing more than the heart consciousness of that one mind that we were arguing from a scientific perspective is right at the core of all existence. So yes, you're very wise, Jessica, to hit the nail on the head that this is all about love, the binding force of love, and about heart consciousness. That's truly what's going on here. And Karen, of course, would jump into heart math and all the evidence for the tremendous
Yeah.
information processing of the heart compared to the brain, et cetera. So there's plenty to be said about all that. But ultimately, it's all about love and the primacy of consciousness and how we're all sharing that consciousness. But as much as you can get into discussions from a scientific perspective about that primordial mind, never forget that ultimately it's about love and that binding force of love that is so critical to understanding the nature of our relationship with the universe and our very purpose for existing. So yes, heart consciousness is absolutely at the center of every bit of this discussion.
Yeah, agreed. So fascinated by it. I'm very bad with names, but Tommy helped me out here. The guy who wrote the book on the heart as like say if you had one piece, say you had I don't know why I'm coming up with the word liver. Maybe it's because of the shape of the liver, and you folded it up in a certain way into one chunk, then that's how the heart is folded. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I don't recall. Keep going.
It's like heart physiology layout. Da, 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 da. It's like really not what we kind of envision, or it's not like these schematics in textbooks with the four chambers and
Hmm.
it's you can divide it up this way. It's like no, it's wrapped upon itself. But you made me think, remember this from the heart math. I mean, that fascinates me because I'm a mathematician too. So it's like heart math. I like that.
Is it
um,
was it Barnwell?
I don't know. I can't
That's the only
remember name.
name I could think of. Um, yeah, it's the only one
Anyway,
I
it
can
doesn't
think
matter.
of. Yeah, no,
Um,
no, you're fine. No, um, yeah, no, heart folded in on itself. Yeah, no,
like it's one piece of thing like wrapped up in a certain conformation.
it's
Like
kind of like how proteins fold. It's like the primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, where it's like kind of
no,
no,
different. But I was thinking about protein folding when you were talking about the uh the spooky action. I mean, I studied I know this is a bit of a leap, but it's not because it's
no,
all
not
the
at
same.
all. No, it's all
B12
important.
importers, they're membrane transporters for B12. And so they have these components on the inside of the membrane and these components on the outside. So they have like four parts. And these guys are kind of um, these are dimers and these are dimers. And one of the things we were doing in my project was investigating allosteric interactions. So it was kind of like it reminds me of that spooky action at a distance, because some interaction going on inside the membrane was causing something to change out here physiologically, but there was no connection. So it's like, what's going on there? Like we don't know. It's like you can explain it with your model, what's happening, what you're perceiving. You can do an experiment to show that the effect is what you predicted, but we still don't know what the hell is, how is that happening? So it's like,
Well, I would say essentially it's some form of top-down causality. In other words, if we
yep,
think, you and I were trained in science back in the, 20th, early 21st century, and the general notion in science was you understood all those subatomic particles, all the laws of their interactions, and then physics, chemistry, biology, you slowly kind of build up a system that explains the way the world works, but it's relying on this kind of faith that it's
yeah,
all just determined by bottom up characteristics of these physical, chemical, and biological laws, as opposed to recognizing that there are forms of kind of top down causality when the environment, when the universe itself can actually guide a way things unfold. And for me, George F.R. Ellis is a South African mathematician. He's written extensively about top-down causality in quantum physics and in other systems. I think a lot of the answer lies there, but that in other words, there is a role played by this thing that we can call top-down causality that has to do with organizational principles that apply to the universe at large and to many of its major constituents, but that may not be so apparent from looking at that bottom-up causality, because that's a whole different set of mechanisms. But from my perspective, this is really all about mind over matter, and we're really talking about sharing the mind of the universe. So we're really looking for ways that that top-down kind of mental influence of the universe could guide the evolution of kind of mid-level systems. And that's kind of what I think what you're looking for in that. And that's the same thing entanglement is, but entanglement is just showing us that it lives in a realm of universe that is deeper and showing interconnection of information assimilation and integration than anything in the four-dimensional space-time in which we're operating. So there are other principles that have to do with that bigger picture that we're trying to discern. And that's where I think the magic lies in better understanding this universe, is getting an idea of these different kind of top-down versus bottom-up causal systems and how they result in certain things happening given a certain set of circumstances at the outset.
Hmm.
Do you think that thoughts create reality, like your perceived reality?
That's a huge part of what we're talking about with this top-down causality, is that everything that emerges in the physical world ultimately is caused by kind of structures, energies, information, in that higher mental world. And that's where mind over matter happens. And that's where I would say, for example, if you were demanding, how did my recovery happen? Many scientists would like to think, oh, well, if we had a microscope and could look at your brain when all that was happening, your immune system just took off like wildfire to eradicate. But that's not actually what you see happening in these cases. For example, Anita Moorjani and her stage 4B lymphoma just disappearing after she had a near-death experience. But that's not, they didn't find that on the pathology. The cancer was just going away. It wasn't as if our standard, the immune system be doing it. No, that's not what's happening. There are other kind of top-down causal forces that allow the cancer to just involute. It goes through like a programmed cell death and dies
And why
off.
not? I mean, anything is possible. I really, really believe that.
Well,
It's a
that's where
wild
this
thing to
mind
say
over
out
matter is so
loud.
key.
Yeah, but anything is possible. It's like, it's true. It's weird, but it's true. So I know we're running out of time, but like, the thoughts create reality. I mean, one of the other intriguing things about your return, and maybe why you did return, because you seem pretty happy up there, was this circle of people who really loved you and needed you here. You saw them at this moment when you were descending, and I don't know if it was inevitable that you would have kept descending, because I had a thought that maybe if you didn't have that circle of friends, like some people don't, would their descent result in coming back, or you know what I mean? But it's those people were your son, your wife, your sisters, your brother. They were thinking about you. They were praying. Were they creating your reality here?
Well,
You
I
think?
think they were guiding me back, because that was actually a very strong vision I had at the very end of all this, when I was still very much amnesic for the life of Eben Alexander,
Right.
was the six faces that I saw at the very end of the coma
Eating.
that kind of guided me back here. But it was really the sixth of those faces that was most important. It was my 10-year-old son, Bond, and I did not recognize him at the time because my amnesia, which had been such a prominent factor in my illness, was still very much apparent. And yet I could tell from his pleading with me, Daddy, you're going to be okay. Daddy, you're going to be okay. I didn't understand the words, but it was drawing me back to this world. And it was my love for him, really. His name is Bond. That's quite an appropriate name, especially in retrospect. But that really is what was drawing me back to this world. And in so many ways, of course, it was answering all those questions I'd had from, being abandoned as an infant, at age 11 days, et cetera. Every bit of it was now coalescing to show me that I did have a purpose for being and for being loved and being connected with this universe. And that's the world I was coming back to. So often in that setting, we actually heal so many of the things that had been broken before. And that's exactly what happened to me in coming back to this world. Was I was knitting together threads that had been rent asunder throughout my entire life. And now they were all kind of coming back together. And it was all really out of that sense of love, that binding force of love that connects us all. And that's what so many people in near-death experiences and shared death, which are just like near death, but happen in perfectly healthy people, usually a relative, a loved one at a distance, or they might be at the bedside. But it's really important to get how our interconnections with others are really the important thing. It's those relationships. And that's why we really need to focus much more on taking care of each other. Because at the end of our lives, when we leave this world, that life review will be there waiting for us. And the more we've done good for others and helped others and not handed out so much pain and suffering, the more easily we will pass through that level, in our process of refinement and advance. And for those who are just getting on board with all this, it's also important to point out that we don't just have one life here and then eternal heaven or hell or nothingness or what have you, but our souls come back again and again. That scientific literature on reincarnation is very powerful. I wasn't even aware of it before my coma, but my coma showed me so very clearly that our souls come back again and again that I had to pay attention to it. And that's where I found all that data from University of Virginia, more than 6 decades of study, more than 2,500 cases of past life memories in children suggestive of reincarnation, of which 1,700 of the cases are solved. That is, they actually found the people. And also advice to people, don't worry, your loved one will not reincarnate before they meet you and coming from the other side. The love and the binding force of love is so obviously a crucial part of that world that it would never happen that a loved one would be gone before we needed them. So that's not part of the equation. And of course, the other thing to understand in that discussion is that given that in that spiritual realm, our life review can show us birth, death, everything in between, and you can relive it all at once, that is showing us the power that realm has over time, earth time, and that by occurring in that eternal realm of the infinite and eternal universe, we have access to a tremendous amount of things. And that's why I can tell you that you don't have to worry that a loved one would reincarnate before you get there. That's the important lesson, because some people worry a lot when they hear about reincarnation. They think, well, what if my loved one has already passed to the next lifetime? And that just doesn't happen according to everything I can discern about the workings of that world.
Dr. Rose, final thoughts, final questions, and obviously we can always do another episode as it is kind of what we're talking about, nearly impossible to fit into 60 minutes, which is why we've done so many episodes. But your final thoughts or questions on this episode, Dr. Rose?
Yeah, just one thing that you made me think about. My best friend of many years, one of the first things he told me was that he saw, I think he said it was a psychic, and she told him that like she looked right into his eyes and said, "This is your last time around." So it just made me think of that. I was like,
Whoa.
whoa. So it slowed him down, and it made him more willing to be grateful every day and to make good decisions. And anyway, I thought that was interesting to throw in. Let's do this again. I'll read your third book, and I'd love to talk more. I mean,
Well, good.
I have an endless number of questions.
You read Living Mindful Universe. I suspect we'll have some things to cover. Really try and bring it together. So that'd be great.
For everybody listening, I think the links to all those books are in the description, as well as to the websites and these Sacred Acoustics and all that, and Jessica's Twitter if you want to go follow her.
My Substack too. I wrote an article on your book.
And your Substack. All right, beautiful. Yeah.
I have a Substack, and I wrote it's pretty popular actually, and you should probably read some of the comments. It's been, people have
Okay.
a lot to say about the subject matter. It's jessicar.substack.com. I just picked out some quotes that really stuck out to me in your book. It's kind of like my reflection of having read the book.
Good. Well, I'll look
Doc-
into that. Thank you.
Dr. Rose, email that to me and I'll CC on
I
Dr.
did, I did, I
Alexander.
did. I think
Okay.
I did, but I'll do it again.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right. Well,
Fantastic. I look forward to seeing it.
Dr. Alexander, thank you so much for your time. I always it sounds weird,
And your
but
existence.
I always enjoy looking into his eyes because you just kind of glow, and it does remind me it's, it's not just the words all is well. I see you and I go, okay, yeah, no,
All
all is
is
well.
well.
All is well.
Just
Yeah,
trying
no,
to bring this to the world. The
you
world could
are.
use some comfort, peace, and all is well right now.
You are. You're
Yeah.
all
What I'm working on
sunshine.
doing.
Dr.
All right.
Alexander, Dr. Rose, I
See
love you both.
Jessica.
Thank you so much. And
All right, Tommy, great talking again as always, and we'll
yes,
talk
sir.
again soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Rose. Thank you so much. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Till next time, everybody.